Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. So what if I told you that your IQ isn't just some fixed number? Not at 18, not at 25, and absolutely not at 50. For decades, we've basically been sold this massive myth, right? This idea that intelligence is just a genetic lottery and you're stuck playing whatever hand you were dealt at birth. But when you actually look at the smartest people in history, they tell a completely different story. Today, we're diving deep into the mental models behind genius. We're going to completely unpack this genius operating system and look at the exact science-backed daily habits that history's greatest minds used to literally upgrade their own intelligence.
All right, let's map out exactly what we're covering today. First, the myth of fixed IQ. 2, discomfort and deep thinking. 3, making your thoughts visible. 4, building a knowledge latticework. 5, the power of cognitive recovery. And we'll wrap up with installing the system.
Okay, Section 1. The myth of fixed IQ. Shattering the genetic intelligence illusion.
Picture this. You've got a young boy sitting around, asking himself this totally bizarre question. What happens if I chase a beam of light? I mean, it's an incredibly profound thought experiment. It's literally the seed that would grow into the theory of relativity. Now, you'd probably assume young Albert Einstein's brilliance was super obvious to everyone, right? Well, actually, as a kid, his teachers thought he was slow. They honestly believed he lacked intelligence, completely mistaking his incredibly deep, methodical way of thinking for, just not being very smart.
And honestly, this perfectly highlights that whole genetic myth, the completely false idea that you're just locked into your IQ for life. Because the historical reality, it's vastly different. Take Thomas Edison. He was literally expelled from school and labeled unteachable. Or Charles Darwin. The guy was a totally average student who absolutely hated rote memorization. These icons didn't just win some genetic lottery and coast on easy mode, they completely reshaped humanity for one specific reason. They deliberately built mental models that physically altered how their brains functioned.
Moving on to Section 2. Discomfort and deep thinking. The power of thinking without input and productive struggle.
Now here's where the neuroscience gets really cool. We all have this thing called the default mode network. It's the brain system responsible for your abstract thinking, those sudden moments of insight, long-term reasoning, and your absolute deepest creativity. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Your brain actually gets smarter when it's forced to think entirely without input. Einstein activated this exact network on purpose by just going for long walks alone for hours. No books, no notes, definitely no podcasts. Just pure imagination. Asking himself, what happens if gravity bends space? He basically proved that intelligence explodes when you force yourself to sit with your thoughts completely cut off from the outside world.
And it's such an easy trap for us to fall into today with this modern hustle culture. We somehow convince ourselves that we're growing because we're constantly consuming this endless fire hose of videos, podcasts, and instant life hacks. We're literally scrolling on our phones while brushing our teeth just to feel productive. But while that feels awesome in the moment, all those instant answers, they vanish from our memory by lunchtime. The genius model is the exact opposite. Highly intelligent people don't rush to the answer key. They do the hard work of undistracted thinking, and they actively delay getting help. Yeah, at first it's going to feel boring. Then it feels super uncomfortable. But ultimately, that is what leads to real, lasting insight.
Let's look at Benjamin Franklin for a second. He turned this exact discomfort into a daily workout for his brain. He trained his mind using this really rigorous 4-step loop. So he'd read a compelling essay, put it completely away out of sight, and then he would struggle, and I mean really struggle, to rewrite the entire thing just from memory. It was only after grappling with that intense mental friction, pushing his brain to the absolute limit, that he would finally compare his version to the original to refine his logic.
Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it productive struggle, and modern brain imaging proves this is real. The very act of struggling, trying, failing, adjusting, retrying before you ever get help, that activates way deeper neural pathways than if someone just handed you a perfectly packaged explanation. So the next time you feel stuck or totally frustrated learning something new, you got to remember this. Confusion isn't a sign of low intelligence. Confusion is literally the physical mechanism of your intelligence growing.
All right, Section 3. Making your thoughts visible. Writing to think, not to record.
So, most of us are using writing completely wrong. We basically just use it to record stuff, logging what we ate today in a journal, or trying to be a human hard drive for basic facts during a Zoom meeting. But brilliant people, they use writing to actually think. There's fascinating research out of Princeton and UCLA showing that writing by hand improves your conceptual understanding so much more than typing on a laptop. Why? Because it literally forces your brain to slow down to the speed of your pen. It helps you catch those glaring gaps in your logic and takes these vague, floating ideas and turns them into precise, visible objects that you can actually scrutinize.
Leonardo da Vinci is an absolute masterclass in this. He wasn't writing neat, polished, publish-ready essays. No way. His notebooks were beautifully, intensely chaotic. They were totally unorganized, alive, and just packed with this wild mix of questions, messy diagrams, fragments, and even glaring contradictions. He wasn't collecting organized facts just to look smart, you know. He was rigorously stress-testing his own thoughts, because intelligence grows where thoughts are deeply examined, not just neatly filed away.
Which brings us to Section 4, Building a Knowledge Latticework, Cross-Domain Learning, and Deliberate Memory.
The legendary investor Charlie Munger had this great phrase. He described his own genius as building a latticework of mental models. See, high IQ individuals don't just memorize isolated trivia. They understand fundamentally how different systems connect to one another. Physics teaches you cause, effect, and momentum. Biology teaches you adaptation. Psychology exposes our human biases, and economics explains how incentives drive our behavior. When you start weaving these completely separate disciplines together, your reasoning becomes practically bulletproof.
And doing this unlocks a phenomenal capability called transfer intelligence. It's this incredibly rare ability to take a concept you learned in one specific area and apply it to a totally novel context. It's exactly why polymaths like Aristotle, Da Vinci, and Goethe just utterly dominated history. And modern research backs this up, showing that stepping outside your lane for cross-domain learning severely boosts your fluid intelligence, which is your real-time ability to reason your way through brand new, unfamiliar situations.
But to build that latticework, you need a rock-solid foundation. Enter Nikola Tesla. He didn't just casually stumble into having a great memory. He trained it like a muscle every single day. Tesla could visualize these massively complex machines, rotate them perfectly in his mind, and mentally test out the mechanics before he ever picked up a physical tool. Ancient scholars did exactly this, using active recall and spaced repetition. And today, MRI studies prove them right, showing that people who treat memory as a daily workout develop incredibly dense, highly efficient brain connections. Memory isn't just a talent, folks. It's a highly trainable skill that speeds up your complex reasoning. All right, Section 5, Power of Cognitive Recovery. Why intelligence upgrades during rest, not hustle.
4 to 5. That's it. That is the absolute maximum number of deeply focused hours Charles Darwin worked in a single day. Just 4 to 5 hours. So what did one of the most prolific scientists in human history do with the rest of his time? He walked. He rested. He reflected. Truly brilliant minds understand a basic biological truth. You just cannot grind all day. They exert themselves only when their cognitive battery is at 100%, and then they walk away.
Honestly, this completely wrecks our toxic modern obsession with grind culture. Society constantly pushes us toward chronic stress, sleep deprivation, and just relentless 24/7 stimulation. But all of that is actively damaging your executive function, the literal biological core of your IQ. Your brain does not upgrade while you're spinning on a hamster wheel, it upgrades during cognitive recovery. We're talking deep sleep, daily movement, getting some sunlight, and explicitly giving yourself permission to just be bored. Boredom is not a weakness. It's a vital phase of recovery where your brain finally gets to process everything you've learned. Let's bring it all together in Section 6, Installing the System, moving from hacks to daily habits.
Okay, so how do we actually install this genius operating system into your life right now? Here's your checklist. First, start taking daily thinking walks with absolutely zero inputs. Seriously, leave the phone and the earbuds at home. Second, embrace that productive struggle. Force yourself to write down your best guess before you ask anyone for the answer. Third, keep a thinking journal, but focus heavily on what actually confused you today, not just a list of what you did. Fourth, build your lattice work deliberately by learning one new concept outside your field every single week. Fifth, train your memory. Try recalling and teaching ideas to yourself out loud before you ever check your notes. And lastly, fiercely protect your cognitive energy. Let yourself be bored. True intelligence is built through these precise daily systems, not through some viral, quick-fix life hack.
The smartest people in history didn't just passively hope for intelligence. They built daily systems that practically forced it to grow. So if intelligence is truly an operating system, which one are you choosing to run today? Are you going to stay distracted by all the endless noise? Or will you disconnect, embrace the struggle, and start truly thinking? The choice is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep building that genius operating system.